Good afternoon, Unati.
Hi, Masabata. How are you?
I'm good, ma'am, and how are you?
I am good, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not Bali Sabata. Today,
Good afternoon.
mm,
Good afternoon, Kilebile and Bali.
Hello, am I audible? Just checking before the class begins.
yes, you are.
Thank you.
So we start at 3:05 to give others opportunity to join. Thank you. it seems almost every the sign language interpreter starts gets the number up. So we're still missing a couple because there's myself, Nati, Michelle. There's 3 of us. So they actually just 8 students. Okay, more than half, 3 students missing. All right, welcome everybody to this week's session. If you remember, last week we went through hearing impairment, what the implications are, what the law says about it, and the experience of, different aspects that we spoke about. This week we're going into visual impairment. Okay, we're going to go through a lot of material for this week's course, but we're going to try to focus on just one. There are 3 videos I want us to focus on because it covers most of what this week, has for you. Hopefully, I think it's quite interesting because here you'll be taken into both not just the barriers, but also the experience of persons who are visually impaired. Especially my colleague and friend, Benedict Letian. So he's going to be coming on Thursday to speak with you. I've known Benedict a long time. We still work together. We're actually trying to work on something together, just that we've not had the time to work on it. If you've noticed has any of you noticed on PeopleSoft, when you go to PeopleSoft, have you noticed a button that says screen reader mode? I don't know if anybody has noticed that when you go to PeopleSoft. If not, when you go next time, just try and pay attention to it. It was part of the work of Benedict because it was instrumental in testing some of our UCT systems for assistive technology, screen reader technology. So when Amatuba was being launched, I was one of the people I was called to evaluate the vendors who were bidding. I'm not going to call the other names because that's confidential. But I was called to evaluate some of the vendors who were bidding for our learning management system at UCT. And I did evaluate 1 or 2 of them. And then we came up to the last 2, the one we're using now from Brightspace, Amatuba, and the second one. And part of it was to test how well a screen reader is able to navigate the site. Hopefully, maybe I'll have the opportunity to some of you might know about it, but hopefully I'll get an opportunity to demonstrate that, to you in online in class for you just to get a feel of how persons with visual impairment navigate the online world when they're using a screen reader. So, but after doing that, what I'm saying this is the need for us never to forget this, nothing about us without us, okay? So when I finished that, it was like, oh, okay, can you come and continue helping us with testing this system or that system? I said, no, I'm not. I'm not going to do that. You have to get a person with visual impairment who uses the screen reader to do the testing. Because no matter how good I am, no matter how well I do things, I won't be able to catch things which the person who experiences it will be able to identify. So that's when you look at people, when you try to learn using screen reader to test websites and everything, there's the automated one, and then there's the one where the user has to also be involved here. So yeah, so you're going to meet Benedict, a charming fellow, although he makes a lot of jokes. But anyway, yeah, you're going to meet him on Thursday. And so hopefully by the time we go through his content today, you will be able to get context and be able to draw up on areas you need more clarification on, because he goes through what the assumptions are around visual impairment, in special schools and the rest of it, what the reality is, what is the experience of the learner with visual impairment in school, and then what is the experience of the teachers, So it particularly hones in on the value of special schools. So to help you with your argument in terms of this argument we're having around, special schools, mainstream school, where do you fall into, where don't you fall into, and the rest of it. Yeah. All right. So today we'll go through introduction of visual impairment from my colleague also, Dr. South African's name, Verhoef. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Suna Verhoef. We're going to go through her video, just a consolidation of it, where she really introduces the visual impairment. Then after that, next video we'll go through with Brian. I brought in Brian because there's an aspect of it which I think is very, very important, and which connects to what we learned in what we learned in the first week. Remember that first week, that Eastern Cape video, a lot of you mentioned something very important. I think it was mostly, especially in Bali, and there was someone who mentioned it in the chat, I think in Bali and Cedric, where we talked about the humanity, being human. It's like going beyond being a teacher or a carer, but being human. Brian talks about that. Then lastly, we'll then go through Benedict's sections, okay? Before we go for that, let me just ask, how is everybody doing? Anybody wants to chip in anything, how things are going? Otherwise, then we'll just dive into that. I won't do temperature check today, because there's a lot to, but this is my way of doing temperature check. Anybody wants to share anything? We are just rolling from one day to the next, which I can understand. Yeah, I can understand.
Ike, if I can just share how I feel.
Yes.
I feel very exhausted. I feel like I've been running a marathon. Yeah, I know that it will not be the same for students. They've got quite a lot, but it's just I
sorry for cutting you. You just read Alice's mind. That's exactly what she put in the chat. So go ahead.
What did she say on the chat?
She said we should do a temperature check on you guys. We never know.
Yeah. Hey, Alice.
Alice, are you sure you want to do that? You might be opening a kind of bombs.
You'll be shocked. You'll be shocked. Yeah, I think it's really for me settling in and the run around that I'm getting to do. It feels like it's unending. Anyways, I'm happy to be in the class. That's how I feel. Just feel exhausted.
Thanks, Natty. And it's similar to me. I get barely about 3-4 hours sleep, in a day because of all the work. So it's similar to me, exhausted. There's a lot to do. And Onata and I, we're working on your draft assignments to give you feedback, okay? So I feel exhausted also. A lot of work to do. And I think it's a privilege and blessing that Kelly is with us in this course, because him being on this course is opening, because I've mostly dealt with visual impairment at university. I mostly dealt with visual impairment, very little with hearing impairment. So I think it's a blessing with Kelly being with us on the course, because I'm learning a lot, extra lot, with making sure that the accommodations are there and the rest of it. Because I'm sure you will notice sometimes the captions for the videos, it doesn't get things accurately sometimes. Yeah. And that's where human input is also required, but there's a whole lot of content, we have. So I'm learning a lot from that. But I'm also enjoying, and I'm sure Onati the same thing, enjoying your conversations, the conversations we're having, and the deep insights you guys are bringing. You're really making effort to engage with the content, to bring your own insights, to challenge, what you feel needs to be challenged, and to be respectful of one another. Yeah. So that is also how I feel, about the course. Yeah. So thanks, Alice, for picking that up. Yes, the thing goes both ways. Okay, then Isana says, good evening, apologies for being late. That's fine. Kerry says, I'm quite exhausted. I'm really tired. I drank Coke yesterday, evening to cope with pressure I have. I was sleepless whole night, and now sleep is kicking it. Yeah, just try and find times in between. You will learn. Okay, I didn't talk about this. I talked about it last year. I'm sure Natty knows about it. I'm sure if some of you don't do that, but there's something called power naps. It helps a lot. So you have to find, so I'm telling you, you'll be so surprised how 1 hour or 30 minutes of sleep can help rejuvenate you, to be able to keep up and things like that. Of course, it's not something we say should be your normal routine. No, you should get enough sleep. But in some of those instances, it does help, because I do that a lot. We are all, yeah. I get you. Hopefully, so because online, yeah, it's true. We look at the other online activities, but you finish the first 4, which are for marks. The other ones are not for marks. Not that you shouldn't do them, you should also do them, but the emphasis is not so much on them as the first 4 that were for marks. Okay, so hopefully that helps. And I think it's in week 6. There's no OLA. Yeah, then you have time to prepare for, exam and the rest of it. All right. Okay. So let's get going. Let's get going for this week. I share my screen. All right. So those are, textbook. Like I said, there's a lot of, in this course, there's a lot of content, a lot of things to go through, but you will choose what you engage with most that helps support arguments you make in the assessments. Okay, so that's very, very important. Like I said, we're starting with visual impairments. Let's listen to Suna. She gives a very nice summary of the implications, visual impairments, and the rest of it. But also, we're not going to go through this, but also when you go to the end, you will see the full lecture. So if you want to go through the full lecture, because there's more to it, but the first part we're showing today captures most of what needs to be done. Full lecture is long; it's about 2 hours plus. So you can choose to go through that, at your own time. Okay. Well, let's start off with her.
Good morning. My name is Suna Farouf, and I'm a teacher at the Pioneer School for the Visually Impaired and Visitor. And it is a huge privilege and pleasure to talk to you this morning about my passion. We only have 20 minutes, so let's start. My laptop is a bit slow. Just excuse this, please. Right. 20 minutes, I can only give you a glimpse. We'll be looking at the spectrum of visual impairment. We'll have a look at 7 educational principles at the South African context and an international curriculum known as the Expanded Core Curriculum. Visual impairment can range from, as what we know as blindness, where you cannot differentiate between light and dark, and then low vision or partial vision, which is also a spectrum and encompasses anything in having photoacuity, central vision loss, peripheral vision loss, interrupted vision, low contrast problems, lighting sensitivity, impaired eye movements, color loss, and a combination of some of the above. It's a visual portrayal of what this would look like for a person and the different effects it would have on your vision. What does this mean practically? So if we start at the very beginning, when you are a little baby, vision is about 80% of your learning process. So what happens with a little child is that if you cannot see, there's a lot of information that you're missing by accident, so to speak. So that is called incidental learning, learning that is not planned, but that you see. So in this case, this little baby is learning about shapes, colors, and movement. So movement also, because there is something that he or she can see, there's a motivation to reach out, and as soon as you can move independently, you start moving towards the object. So a child with visual impairment has fewer opportunities for incidental learning. There's a limitation in the range and variety of experiences, and there's limitations in mobility. As a teacher that is passionate about her job, I'd like to say that I'm not comfortable with the words limitations, problems, and lack of, but they are realities in the lives of our children. So all one needs to do is to stop and think and remember that this is a whole child, that we're not in the business of fixing them, but that they need specialist support from teachers who have knowledge of ways to assist them, because they have the same right to access quality education. So the principles and the model of teaching that we use focuses on the following. Firstly, learning takes place when children are interested and engaged with the material to be learned. When you can promote immersion by offering multiple instances of explanation and demonstration of concepts and activities, and when you provide direct and concrete experiences. Learning takes place best when they can do and be busy, and when experiences are unified. Education is also very effective. We can use more than just the senses that we are traditionally thinking of. And to expand your horizons, consider that when you are learning, it's not just sight, but there is sound, there is touch, there is movement. Look at this natural environment, natural learning. You'll see that all these concepts are involved, and that the principle of being immersed and engaged is definitely relevant here. A child who cannot see can still learn a lot in this context. Similarly, again, the context of natural learning. Imagine a child who is visually impaired, and imagine how much can still be learned through touching, hearing, through movement, feeling the egg crack, stirring, and all in a natural environment where, if you have a look, the hands over hands is happening, similar to here. Helping all the way until there's independence. So early childhood interventions are extremely important. This is a period of rapid brain development. And during this phase for children with disabilities, it can ensure that physical, social, language, and cognitive skills of all these children are developed to their maximum potential. Work done by the Nkosi Foundation in the Eastern Cape is a clear example of how different textures are used, how shiny, moving objects are used as motivation to learn and reach up. Here is an example of natural learning. You've got your Mari biscuit, you've got icing, and again, hand over hand, physically helping and very motivating because you need your little biscuit at the end. Books, tactile as possible, interesting, engaging. Little blind girl being exposed to the tactile sighted letters, so to speak, and also to the Perkins Braille machine. Although this little girl is too young to actually start learning Braille, she's doing some exercises, strengthening muscles so that she can eventually write well as well. Imagine this in a preschool environment is easier than when you start thinking of primary and high school and tertiary education. It is an obligation, it is a right. And there are so many policies and laws and also training manuals available. One particular one that I will upload to Vula is the one in the middle. And this guidelines that you use, even, I mean, as well in higher education and training. The context, our South African context, is a complicated, complex, challenging context to do any work with learners with disability. A report concerning education of learners with disability, specifically visual impairment, done by Section 27 and leading organizations for the blind, was called Left in the Dark. And the conclusion is that in the South African context, for inclusive education, the challenges are lack of support, insufficient infrastructure, lack of funding, negative societal and cultural views of disability, serious systemic and administrative failures, inadequate disability-specific knowledge and skills of educators. How do we, as educators, function within this context? We cannot wait for everything to be fixed. We cannot wait for a perfect situation. So we have to understand inclusion as a process. It's not perfect. Words like experimenting, words like innovation, these are the things that we will have to focus on as educators. It's a messy business. But the bottom line is, before you teach, after you teach, you focus on, did I increase participation in learning? Did I do my best to do that? Then you accept this is uncomfortable. You cannot be perfect. There's a discomfort about being busy with inclusion. But that's the work we're doing. One of the main challenges is to identify children with visual impairment. There's a very simplistic guideline that we have here. You can have a look at whether the child has blurry vision, whether the child has a squint. Children complaining about painful eyes, complaining about struggling to see what's on the board, inking eyes, rubbing the eyes a lot, red eyes or eyes with a discharge. These children have to be checked. This is a longer, more substantial list of the things that you can look out for and how to present in class. It's comprehensive, and I wouldn't like to read through the whole list. You can take a screenshot photo and go through that yourself. Two things I'd like to say is that low vision often affects spelling, and learners omit small words, and when they read out loud, they have to reread and they skip words. So keep your eyes open for these symptoms. Department of Education compiled this handout, this guideline, and it addresses the challenges that teachers have that have to cover CAPS, which is so content heavy. And what they propose, and in the training that they do, what they propose is what we know as universal design for learning. The way they presented it in this guideline is just a little bit different, but the basics are that you think about and change what and how you present new information. You look at the methods and activities that you use in order that the learners understand their context. You change your methods of presentation materials and adapt the learning environment. And you also look at adapting methods of assessment. And this is just another way of representing universal design. So in terms of visual impairment, if you can have a look, what's relevant to us is the sound aspect, that you focus on that and your other senses, as I've mentioned. The learners can express what they know through speech to text and other assistive technologies. And in terms of engagement, is specifically effective if they are within real life. You can use real life examples and are in real life contexts. If you start teaching learners with visual impairment, there are some practical challenges, but often basic common sense tips to follow. Here's a child pouring, and you would be considering how not to miss. And then a very simple solution is to put your finger in the glass at the top. And then as soon as you feel the liquid, you know that there's enough. And then when it's hot liquids, you'll feel the steam rising and then also realize now it's full enough. But again, it needs practice. Very well-known activist and leader in the deafblind community, Haben Girma, describes how she was taught how to dance. And in the one scene in her autobiography, she explains that she was allowed to go on her knees and touch the teacher's feet and follow, while still touching, the movement of the teacher while dancing. And the teacher herself was blind and managed to teach Haben how to dance, waltz, salsa, all of that, because there was room for that kind of learning. I recommend reading this autobiography. Parents are hesitant to give their children who are blind and visually impaired the experience to work in situations because they are scared that they might get hurt, and that is a very real concern. At our school, we have a teacher who is blind, and here she is demonstrating to one of our blind learners how she approaches basic skills in the kitchen and what safety guidelines she uses. Notice again, hand over hand, practical, repeated situations, and engaged and immersed and motivated because they were going to make nice chips to eat. If faced with a situation like this as a teacher with no experience of visual impairment education, it might look quite daunting that a learner will have to proceed to know things like algebra without the advantage of sight. Our learners start young, grade R and grade 1, with systems that are tactile and involve Braille, and they have the concrete shapes that they can touch, and they are taught the names of these shapes through the means of Braille. When it comes more detailed information, I apologize, this visual is not that effective, but they are taught both the sighted shapes, that they know what is larger than and smaller than, as well as the Braille codes for those concepts. So this is an old study, but this emphasizes the importance of Braille in the lives of our learners. With Braille, when you were born blind, you cannot be literate. You cannot read or write if you do not know Braille. It is not a language, it is a code, but it gives you access to language. And in this study, it showed that learners who had learned Braille the chances that they would be employed was larger and higher than learners who did not have access to Braille. Means by which learners write Braille initially starts with the Perkins Braille machine and then becomes more sophisticated with technologies such as these that are not computers but are considered tablets. And they are also devices that you can then use in conjunction with your laptops, and they then Braille input and output. There's a large variety of technology available. It's expensive, insurance is needed, and in our country, sadly, the learners are not exposed to such high technology as they should. During lockdown, we had to convert to using WhatsApp, and a large amount of learners, not only ours, were taught in this way. The information was sent through voice notes and they sent the information back. Not an ideal situation, but again, a messy, uncomfortable, imperfect way, but we were teaching. Tsunati Foundation in that time did wonderful work. They put together little packets, including the ingredients to make the recipes, Braille instruction, and they also sent little musical instruments and wonderful things they did during lockdown. Because of the fewer opportunities for learning and the limitations and experiences, internationally, a curriculum was formed and drawn up, and it's known as the Expanded Core Curriculum, which is a very specific set of skills, helps educators with learners with visual impairment. It consists of different areas. These are the areas that I'm not going to read to you. You can read that yourself. I'm focusing on one specific area, which is orientation and mobility. So this is what we would typically know of as learning how to use the cane, but it involves so much more. And as educators, these are the concepts that we then in class look at. That's body concept, environmental concept. We can look at using the GPS, and we infuse these concepts within geography, even in English, where activism and awareness is also important. And we have our learners write letters to the press, talking about the condition of pavements in our town, and also how to access social media and use it for the same purpose as typically the letters to the press, to tell the society and the government to make their environment more accessible. As far as possible, organize outings so that learning can take place. Learners are exposed to the typical format of supermarkets, but also, again, when it's not typical. They've got to use their cane skills, their social skills, self-determination, planning, all of that in environments that are real. In the end, this is what it's about. We want to help our learners to become adults that can work, that have lives that are engaged, meaningful, fulfilling, where they can have agency, choices, and that they feel a sense of belonging and being comfortable in the world.
All right. Okay, so let me stop sharing there. So that was a lot which Dr. Sunoff have shared, Dr. Suna, and what are people's thoughts on what has been shared, and maybe to help also guide. You can share what you think, okay? But also, if you want, you can also comment on what are the aspects you think, if you were an educator, you would want to focus on to help increase the participation of learners with visual impairment at schools? Yeah. We can start off with what aspects struck you the most and why? Did anybody, I forgot to ask if anybody had the chance to go through the video before class? Anybody wants to share? Ilam, okay, Masibata. Ilam, I thought maybe you're switching your video, maybe you want to share. Masibata, go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. I see that exhaustion. I can feel it. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Ike. I did have a chance to go through the material, and I think similar to how I felt last week, week 4, with regard to the deaf information. This is also giving me that excitement to learn and understand the visual impairment. And looking at the information and listening to videos, I realized that these are things that we know, and some of them we tend to ignore maybe, or we take them for granted. For instance, the issue of a person who is visually impaired. When you meet them on the streets, it's like you're passing as if you're not seeing a person. And the fact that this person cannot see you, maybe in my mind, is what makes us ignore them even more. And the one thing that I found insightful in all this information is the fact that all this material, they cut across, especially when it comes to performance in class. I was looking at the signs with regard to what is it that you need to observe for you to understand that the child has a difficulty. And some of the things that I'm noticing there, they are things that can be associated with a child who is not able to conceptualize or capture information. The things like where a child is not able to write was or in a structured manner. So those things can be mistaken to be saying this child cannot be taught in class because of how they conceptualize in terms of structuring the writings and stuff. So it is an eye-opener for me in terms of not taking things for granted, but to dig deeper in understanding what could be the root cause to every situation. But also, similar to what we learned last week, the issue of understanding the ear, the eye. This morning, funny enough, yesterday, funny enough, one of my close relatives' daughter had a challenge in school where she eventually suddenly lost vision. I don't know what was the problem with her, but they left her at school and the security found her there and she was not able to see properly. So I was thinking, this is a coincidence. I'm learning about this topic, and eventually I'm getting into contact with this case now. And I found myself digging deeper in terms of understanding, maybe better understanding with regard to what could be the challenge for this girl, but not really diagnosing her with regard to what is happening, because she was saying she's having gritty eyes, and I was just trying to locate just in my mind to understand what could be the reason. But more than anything, I think it's the appetite that I'm getting out of all this new information that I'm acquiring right now. And also, earlier when you were touching on the feel, one of the things that I wanted to mention was being amongst this group and the support that I'm getting and the understanding which comes with what we have in this group is also one of the things that I will carry as I continue with the classes. Yeah, I think let me pause there. Let me pause there. Thank you so much.
So, Masabata, thank you very much for that contribution. You touched on some very critical areas. In fact, you touched on the area where I want us to go through the next video, which is Brian's lecture. I want us to go through that aspect. But let me not talk too much. I've noted the things you've said. If we have time, I will come to it. Let me give other people opportunity to also go, because we always seem to run out of time. So let me allow Ilham to go, then whoever else wants to. Yeah, let me not hog the space. Yeah, go ahead.
Good afternoon, everybody. I have managed to read some of the readings in the material, and what I really took from there is that visual impairment is quite diverse, and learners have various educational tools that depends on the type and the severity of their vision loss. And also that the early identification and the intervention is really critical to prevent long-term educational difficulties. Also, inclusive education in line with UDL requires more than just classroom adaptations. It really also depends on the teachers' attitudes, the emotional support, the partnerships at home, and the teachers are really central to inclusion because they don't serve just as educators, but as observers and advocates. And the other part that I really wanted to just touch on, if you asked if we were teachers, what would we do to make things easier for our children with visual impairments? After the lecture, I really also realized that learners with visual impairments miss opportunities for incidental learning because they can't observe what's happening around them. So firstly, describe everything that's happening in the classroom instead of relying on the learners to see it. Use multisensory like teaching strategies that can engage learners with touch, where they can listen, where they can manipulate. In maths, you can use physical shapes like counters as well. Also very important is to arrange the classroom in a safe space and for people's mobility, because if your vision is limited, then you're prone to injury. And then also to identify the learners with undiagnosed vision difficulties. And the inclusive classroom culture is also vital by teaching learners about disability, respect, and the diversity thereof. Classmates should also create like a buddy system to support one another naturally, without treating the person with disabilities differently or with any pity. And lastly, sorry, I know I'm hogging the time, work very closely with parents, with the orientation and mobility specialists, therapists and support staff to really understand better where this stems from and how we can support our students. But in closing, the lecture really reminds us that inclusion isn't about waiting for that perfect resource or the specialized equipment. It's about being flexible and creative with what you have, and also intentional to remove those barriers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ilian. Another very interesting answer. But is that thing I said from the beginning? If you're looking for 100% perfect inclusion, you will get exhausted. You will get exhausted. You will get so many disappointments. Are we increasing participation and how the learners are getting what they need to get? And then just one thing I want to say: the one you talked about classroom arrangement, Very in Bernard Fuller, when we used to have, I'll just say that and I'll move to Alice. I didn't do it. In Bernard Fuller, we used to have physical classes. When students with visual impairment, when they come into class, what used to happen is that when we're done with class, we leave. The cleaners would have arranged the seats in a way that the students with visual impairment are able to navigate. But because the cleaners don't know about that, when they come, they clean and they rearrange the place, standard classroom ways, and then leave. So the next day, the whole thing is confusing for our students, which tells the importance. Is one of the things, I think soon I've covered it a little bit, but I think Benedict talks about this. You will see that it's important to also include our non-teaching staff, cleaners, administrators, financial, include those people because they matter also. So that's just, there's a whole lot of things you've spoken about. If we have time, I will come into it just like Masabata, but I'll keep it so that we'll give more time for people to contribute. All right.
I wanted to
Alice?
add one thing. Sorry, Prof. I
Yes.
just want to add one last thing, and it actually came up on campus when I was in Wembe. The security staff turns students with guide dogs away. So it's very important to start at the gates of the support staff as you even enter who you really dismiss, thinking of the receptionist should be trained. The security that opens, that is where it starts. But thank you.
So you see, that is very sad because it means that it's not only at my place. That it actually happened at UCT, where I had to then have a conversation that the student was turned away from coming into the lecture hall because they were using a guide dog. And the security staff was like, sorry, animals are not allowed in the building. So I had to go sensitize him about it. Yeah, so that's why I keep talking. Disability cuts across everything, every aspect, every role, every layer. Okay, thanks for that. Alice, was your hand still up? You want to come in before I go to Doreen, or because it's no longer up, or you no longer want to?
So Liam did contribute. She did say most of the stuff, but then I just wanted to my contribution was just on I liked how she had framed what inclusion is. Like it's not something that's perfect or fixed, but it's an ongoing messy process. And it's I think there's one part whereby she said when for her when she's done with the class, she asked the question that she asked herself isn't did I get it right, but it's did I increase the participation. So it builds on the tension that we have been discussing around the inclusion, like rights-based inclusion versus the practical reality of under-resourced systems. And the incidental learning, which she also did mention. And then I think she did say everything. So that's why I put my hand down.
Thanks. And it's very, 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 very important. That's why I was mentioning in the beginning, the value of having Healer in class. And that's what I always say, you learn something every time you have students with disabilities in class. You learn new skills, you learn how to do more inclusion. When I came into UCT, I was guns blazing activism. No, this does not happen. We have to get 100% inclusion. But then afterwards, you start seeing that it's a journey rather than, yes, as much as we want to get to destination, it's a journey where you continue to increase participation, you continue to learn new ways of doing things. Because even if you hypothetically say you reach 100%, the next student with disability or learner who comes in, there will be something that needs to be changed for that student to be accommodated. Right. Thank you. Doreen, go ahead.
Thank you, Doc. Hi, everyone. I think I do support Ilam regarding the buddy system that she mentioned, because it's important for the teacher to encourage social inclusion, especially when it comes to ensuring that the learner with the visual impairment are fully accepted and actually participate with their peers. Because later last week, I attended the disability awareness, and one of the practitioners mentioned that a student with visual impairment was walking with the stick, and the other student was sitting on the road and in the bus, and then not really, they were sitting in the bus, and then they were putting their legs whereby he can't pass. So he was busy trying to, you know, beat the stick on the ground to show that I want to pass. And then the practitioner said he must beat them. He should have beat their legs so that they know that this is important. So I'm saying the buddy system, they should be accepted by their peers within class, because they also struggle with social engagement within the class. So another part that I just want to highlight, it's the Braille resources, which are very expensive, especially it's a major disadvantage to poor schools. Like my school where I grew up from, there was no Braille, and those schools, they don't afford those resources. So for learners with visual impairment, it means they are denied equal rights, or maybe the school will not accept them because of not having those Braille resources. So even the government should also notice those schools and provide funding to the Braille learning materials. Thank you.
Thanks, Doreen. And you see, the body system you spoke about in terms of, understanding the life of a learner or a student with disability is what Prof. Ottomaya touches upon. Is that thing around being able to go beyond, just the resources and everything, but trying to understand how the person actually feels the experiencing of visual impairment. Very, very important. And when you talk about, last thing, you talk about Braille, Suna spoke about that report in 2015, section 27, Left in the Dark. When you read that report, it will be a little bit as if you are watching the video of the school in the Eastern Cape, which you watched in the first week, because that's mostly what that report is about. Because you will get a lot of shock. One very shocking one is where the school had to choose between using the money they had to pay for electricity so that the school will keep functioning, or buying assistive technology materials. They had to then switch the budget to electricity, so the students could not get participation. So funding is a big issue. It's a big issue. But like Suna is saying, they are always, we can't wait for government to do everything. Just like she's saying, we have to say, how can we increase participation? Yes, Cedric, please go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with what the class is saying, and just want to add something that Suna mentions a lot is the process and the practice and the repeated things. And I noticed that they implement UDL differently. They first go to representation, then expression, and engagement. So yeah, in terms of the process and the practice, it's not always about the resources. You can have the resources, but is there patience? Is the attitudes of the teachers towards the benefit of the learner? Will they be able to continue with the process at the end of the day? So yeah, irrespective of whether you have the resources, is the willingness there to assist the learner? Because it is, like the others also mentioned, it's a tedious process. Nothing is going to change overnight. And the reading of Perkins it says that in the beginning, I think they say that vision it plays the biggest part of capturing information. So if you don't have vision, it's even more difficult for the learner to process to process the information that they hear, and so basically they have to make use of the other senses. Yeah. That is my.
So all of you are mentioning very key corner aspects of this week's engagement. I mean, when you talk about it's not always about the resources. You will hear stories from section 27 and from other reports. You hear stories of the assistive technology is there, but teachers don't know how to use it, and it is locked in the room, and nobody touches it. Okay, so you will hear a lot of, because teachers have not been trained on how to use it. So those resources, are not used. But also, it's the importance of that incidental learning. You see, it's very critical for that to be brought to the surface, because it's something that is so negligible with able-bodied people that we don't see the importance of it. She just showed that child alone, that child, on his or her back, looking at that toy on a string. Without anybody saying anything or doing anything, the child is learning color, learning movement, learning sounds, associating sounds with movement, and the rest of it. So that's why she spoke about the ECC, the expanded core curriculum, which is very critical. And she particularly honed in on orientation and mobility. When we started this course in the beginning, we used to go, we visited, or at one point in time, we visited a school of the blind in Worcester. And I don't know if anybody has heard about what we call echolocation. Anybody heard about what we call echolocation? So it's an advanced way which some persons with visual impairment are able to tell what's around them. In fact, we did an exercise whereby the student with visual impairment sat down. We went to the back of the student and we brought a book. So we brought a book behind the student and we tapped the book on the wall, and the student was able to identify that it was a book or a cup or a glass or a spoon. So it's where they're able to use sound around them, to be able to identify where they're going and the rest of the things. So you find, like most of you are saying, there are multiple ways, but you need teachers who are passionate about it. You need teachers who are open to it. You need teachers who don't allow, who don't remain at the first level of disconscious ableism. If you remember, teachers who have advanced beyond the first level, is very important. So sometimes I find that we celebrate that someone has advanced from the first level, that is disability as a medical model, the medical model view of disability, has advanced from the first level to the second level, which is disability as diversity. Sometimes we see that as but I'm finding is becoming the biggest barrier. I'm finding is actually moving from the second level to the third level. Because what I'm finding is that those people who think who only stop at disability as diversity think totally that they've understood disability inclusion totally. Oh, no. It's disability is like race, it's like gender, it's like sexuality, it's like religion. But whereby people who have the medical model view, the deficit view, a lot of them can easily transition from that to seeing the exclusions as systemic, as structural, and the rest of it. As you know, if we don't have that systemic and structural view, then we don't have full inclusion. So just be very mindful of that. If you're celebrating that, at least someone recognizes that disability is not a deficit, that is part of diversity, just be very careful, because that in itself can become a biggest barrier, because someone can believe that, that's all they need to know about inclusion, that disability is part of diversity. And we know that is not it at all. Okay, what's the time? Okay, I think let's go on to Brian's video, because then I want to then touch on that aspect I was speaking about a lot, which is very, very important. Brian's aspect is very, very important. Why I like Brian's aspect is that he touches upon what we need, so what is happening inside us. A lot of time we talk about what the society is doing. Oh, teachers, oh, government, oh, infrastructure, budget, and the rest. But we don't talk about what is happening inside us. That is very critical. Because like I told you, my personal opinion, like I told you in the beginning, is that the biggest barrier, since I've been working in disability, there are many barriers, but the ones that I've seen that is the biggest is attitudinal, which comes from the individual. All right, if no other question, let's move on to Brian's video so that we can finish before break. Oh, Cedric, yes?
Just to let you know that we can't see your video if you are.
No, I'm not started sharing. I've not started sharing, yeah.
No, I'm talking about your video, your camera.
Oh, you can't see my camera. You can't see me.
Yeah, I can't see. We can't see you.
Is it the same with other people? Can anybody see me? My camera is on.
I can see you from my side.
From my side.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. Then it must be my side. I'm gonna log out quickly.
Then if you can go out, come back in.
Okay.
That normally helps.
Thanks.
Yeah. But please, anybody, when you notice that kind of thing, please, yeah, just shout. It's a common thing with teams. All right, let me share my screen. Then we'll go through Ryan's section. So you can go through this other, these other sections. Here, here she goes into, more of the medical, details around visual impairment. So it expands more on what Dr. Suna spoke about. And this is the one I want us to go through. It's not too long. It's about just almost 9 minutes.
Hello again from me, it's Brian. This video is called Understanding Psychosocial Issues in the Life of the Visually Impaired Learner. And when I say that name, Understanding Psychosocial Issues, it sounds sort of rather technical, I thought. And yes, of course, there are difficult issues to understand when we're trying to think about the psychosocial circumstances of the visually impaired child. But the key to these issues and the key message I want to communicate with this talk really is a very simple one. There's only really one point I make with this video. And that's that our challenge as teachers is to listen, feel, and think our way into the world of the visually impaired child. In my work, I often have conversations with teachers who describe feeling quite a lot of anxiety about having visually impaired learners in their classes. To them, visual impairment seems a little bit strange, foreign, a little bit scary, something they're not familiar with at all. They find it hard because of that to just be curious about the life of the child who they're with, to just ask simple questions as they would with any other child. But this is what is needed. A child who's understood feels safe. And a child who feels safe and feels heard is a child who is able to learn. It's true that for people of any age, adults or children, vision loss is often traumatic. And so we'll see signs of emotional distress in the children in our classes. And like any other child, these children need to talk to a safe and caring adult about what they're experiencing. This brings us to the issue of listening and our skills as listeners. Listening is not something which just comes naturally. It's a skill which we need to grow and develop in ourselves. It must be grown over time with deliberate intent. Often when we're around traumatic feelings, particularly perhaps those associated with experiences we haven't had ourselves, when we're around those sorts of feelings, we feel helpless. And when we feel helpless about the distress of someone else, we often need to sort of step in and fix it. In that fixing role, which some of us as teachers know all too well, sometimes all we can do is miss the experience that's being described to us, forget to actually just listen to the human that we are with. Trusting and honest relationships of all sorts are built on good listening. Not on forced solutions, not on sorting things out, but actually on making real contact with the person, with the child we are with. I find it useful in this discussion to think about the difference between empathy and pity. Empathy surrounds the question of what it's like for you as another human being, finding out what it's like, what things are like, what life is like for somebody else. It's a caring, respectful, and quite simple attitude to take where we open our ears and open our hearts to what things are like for someone else. A question I often ask children who seem to be in some sort of emotional distress, an initial question, is the following. I'd say, just tell me about one difficult thing that you experience in your day. And when I hear about that thing, I can then begin to try and understand it, explore it, and show care about that experience that the child is having. This is not special care for special children or something strange like that. That kind of care to me is more like pity. Instead, it's just simple care, curiosity, and understanding which we would show for any child. In the worlds of learners with visual impairment, there are often painful and immense transitions that they experience. As an example of how to listen to the experience of visually impaired learners in our classrooms, I often talk about the following example. When we listen, we are not just listening to the words that a learner is telling us, we're also noticing how he or she behaves and making sense of what is being shown to us about the world of this learner. I very often have the experience of discussions with teachers in which I'll be told a particular sort of a story about a learner with visual impairment. And it goes like this. A child is either new at the school, it might be a special school, or has been there for some time, but has recently experienced a sudden loss of vision, so a precipitous worsening of a visual impairment. So let's say this is a boy of 11 years old who's experienced a precipitous loss of vision recently. And so whereas this boy previously used low vision accessible learning and teaching and support materials such as large print, things have changed in terms of his experience in the classroom now. And because his sight has deteriorated, he now needs to begin to learn Braille and orientation and mobility. Now, what happens then in the story is that the teacher describes how she or he becomes very frustrated because the boy doesn't seem to want to learn these new things, to learn Braille and orientation and mobility. And there's a kind of confusion where the teacher says, well, why doesn't the boy want to do these things? Why doesn't this young learner want to learn Braille and orientation and mobility? Because, of course, it'll be so helpful and useful to him in his new situation of being more severely visually impaired. Now, if we stop and think about this and try and get into the world of that learner and what has happened to him recently, what we realize is that this is a child who's going through enormous changes in how he experiences the world. And they're not changes which are not just to do with a simple instrumental question of whether he uses large print or uses Braille. Instead, they are to do with a very sense of his identity, how he sees himself, how he feels other people see him, and how he experiences the world. Becoming visually impaired or having the experience of one's vision deteriorating, if one already has a visual impairment, brings very real changes to one's everyday life. It's also going to bring losses in terms of what one is able to participate in. And these are the sorts of things we need to imagine and understand in the life of what this little boy is going through. If we understand those things, then we see the child's unwillingness to learn Braille or orientation and mobility not as bad behavior or disobedience, but simply as a completely understandable part of the process of adjustment to his or her new world. We need to open our ears to understanding that experience in a sensitive and supportive way. The more we do that, the more we listen, the more we observe, and the more we think our way into the world of the visually impaired learner, the more we find that what our children say and do makes sense, and we can connect with them in a real way around their experience of the world. As I said earlier, the child who feels heard, who feels understood, is a child we feel in real contact with and a child who feels ready to learn. On a more practical level, it's our responsibility as teachers to build networks of support across parental communities, across teacher communities, and amongst children. We can build networks of support among teachers across schools as well. And we have, lucky for us, in the 21st century, social media, which makes all of this very easy and very possible. Of course, it's true that some children will need professional psychological care at schools, children who are experiencing extreme levels of distress. But I would argue that as teachers, it's our responsibility and it's a first priority for us to do all we can to create a caring, listening, and supportive environment for all children. So let's go ahead and try and do that.
All right. So we have about 15 minutes to go before our break. So any thoughts? Any thoughts on what Professor Tamaya just shared? Anybody wants to A lot of times you'll be introduced to things which maybe you not have thought about or might not have verbalized. What do you think about that? Listen, feel, and think. Yeah, this should be maybe a bit more challenging because it's first of all not asking you about resources or training or skills or those kind of things. It's asking you to, yeah, Alice, go ahead.
Okay, so this one was a bit different,
Mm.
but I think I liked how he framed what looked as difficult or uncooperative behavior of the student as a loss of like it's a response to a loss of identity for the child or the student. Like for the example that he gave about the 11-year-old boy, like he's not resistant to learn something new, but then like to on the teacher's eyes, it's she or sees it as frustration, but then the boy is sort of like in a world of, to him, he has lost something that he has known for quite some time, and it's him. He sees it as if the world that he has known for quite some time is disappearing, and he has to enter a new world that he's not fully aware of and does not understand. So it's like he has lost a part of himself, according to the boy. But then we interpret his loss as frustration. Yeah,
Good.
and then I think that's
That's
where I can end for now.
yeah. Thanks, Alice. That's a very, very key message. It tells you, it opens your eyes to sometimes when we see behavioral changes of learners with disabilities, we should not judge on the surface and just say this child is being rebellious or this child is being this. The child is actually communicating something. The learner is communicating, trying to tell you something. And what Brian is saying is that if you take the time to listen, if you take the time to feel, then you can think around what this child is trying to communicate, to me. I'll come to Masabata just now, but I won't say much. When I started wearing this, the first time the issue came up, because I had very good eyesight, both short-sightedness and long-sightedness. I can see things that are far away. My twin, because I'm a twin, my twin sister used to, whenever there's something far away, she would tell me, what does that say? Then I'll read it to her. She was always amazed, So in my mind, I was like, oh, I have perfect eyesight, I don't want to touch glasses. And first time this happened was when I was at Home Affairs. I was filling out a form, and then the blurriness started. And just those few minutes, the experience I had, I could, which is nowhere near experience of a person with a visual impairment, but it opened up a different world which is more personal and which impacts on the physical world, but which, if it is not understood, if it is not accommodated, can lead to all kinds of serious participation challenges, And that's that aspect which Brian was talking about, the identity part of it, the renegotiation. He talked about he sees himself as another, the way he sees himself has changed. The way he's thinking about the way other people see him and the way he experiences the world. Right. Let me stop at that. Masabata, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Doctor. I think one of the key highlights for me is this difference that he is bringing forth of empathy and pity. I think in most instances, we tend to lean towards the pity side when we see someone who is visually impaired or any kind of disability, which is something that maybe one needs to empower yourself to come out of that and be able to respond in a better way. The other part is where he is talking about the parents of a child who eventually loses sight. The parent, most of the time, they are not prepared as well for that kind of a situation. And they might end up distancing themselves from the child because of lack of knowledge or lack of proper way of handling this. I was reading the story of Litiani and how his parents were supportive. And I was like feeling, I so wish I could be like his parents, because I know I am not like that. And one of the things that we tend to do is to take over in terms of assisting without providing a space for a child to maneuver around those issues by themselves. So I think those are the things that maybe as we go through this process, it's I remember the other day you said we are converting. So yeah, I see that happening a lot these days.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
even after class, I tend to discuss with my son whatever the learning content that we are being exposed to here. Yeah, but yeah, it is quite enlightening, and one needs to really introspect and see how you can benefit out of this content.
Yeah. Thanks, Mr. Bata. You're connecting. And I'm glad you're really making this link, because you're connecting what your colleagues have covered in the first semester. So that part where you talked about pity and empathy, that's one of the things they covered in first semester, which is unconscious motivations. What the unconscious processes that leads us to respond to disability. And one of them was the difference between pity and empathy. Pity is the one where you are separated, from the situation. You just feel that, oh, the life is a tragedy, and let's see what we can give in terms of charity to be able to help, which is different from, empathy. Empathy is trying to actually understand, putting yourself in of course, you cannot put yourself in the shoes of somebody, but you can attempt to try and understand how they're experiencing, what they're experiencing. And once you start doing that, you start understanding if there's a child, like we said, with behavioral issues, you start understanding why those behaviors, are happening, and that the child is trying to communicate something. And then you now start looking at, if you don't have the knowledge about it, then speak with professionals and see how they're able to support people to do that. So yeah, so Brian, the things Brian touched upon, that, like I said, that listening, so listening with empathy. So that means not just listening, because just like you said, Mr. Bata, we often listen to fix. So that means when we are hearing it, we're thinking about, oh, what can we do which is not a bad thing, not a bad thing. We want to be able to put resources in place, we tap into our training and things like that. But what I'm hearing him saying is that don't let it stop at that. Don't let it be the only response. Listen to understand why you're listening to say, okay, how can we help to increase participation? Because if you listen beyond just to fix, then that's what he was trying to say. You will then pick up that at that immediate instance, the child's challenge was not learning Braille or orientation or mobility. The child's challenge was their identity. The child was trying to negotiate. How will I be able to? Because your whole confidence level changes. How will you navigate? Bringing up a new confidence about yourself or maintaining the confidence you had before. Okay, how will you negotiate how other people see you? Would they see you as less? Would they start bullying you? Would they? And of course, when you see how other learners are treated, because you're not the only learner with disability. When you see how other learners, you are also negotiating, will I be treated like that? So you can see. And then how will I even move around the world? So you can see in that instance, the learning Braille, which is important. Braille is access to the world, you know, as much as a screen reader gives access to the world in the information age we have. Those things are, when any of the videos or anything are saying about this, they are talking about these things, they are not saying that the other aspects we are talking about in terms of learning Braille are unimportant. No, but what they're saying is that we have to be educators who are with training and everything are flexible enough to know what is happening and to know what to apply at what time, you know. So it's saying at that instance, that is not the immediate challenge of the child. The child is not participating and does not want to engage and everything. The lecturer is feeling frustrated, which is true, but the child is negotiating a more immediate need, which is their identity. And then what Brian was saying is that, you know, a child that is who feels that they are heard, included, is able to learn. And then you will see that the child is now able to actually welcome, you know, use learning Braille, orientation and mobility, and will be able to fully participate in class. So that's what he's saying. Listen, feel. That feel part is very critical. That's the empathy. That feel part is very, it goes hand in hand with the listening. And then think around. So I just wanted to bring that up for us as much as we're going into learning these skills. And when we finish this program, we're going into our different sectors, either education, government, NGO, entrepreneur, whatever it is, for us to keep that in mind and start developing. Remember, he said, listening is a skill. It's not something you learn immediately. It's something you develop as you move along. As you continue to develop, you continue to sharpen your ways in able to, and that's very critical because it just changes the whole mindset and the whole view around when we see learners with behavioral issues, that's the form of communication that they are doing. Okay. We're left with 4 minutes. What is the other part I wanted to cover that was very important? So when we come back, we'll now go through the 3 different part presentations from Benedict, where he talks about, like I said, he talks about the assumptions around special schools, and after that it moves into, you know, what does research actually say is happening at special schools, and then he talks about his experience as a learner with visual impairment who went to a special school, and then afterwards lecturers and teachers, their views around special school and how, you know, what are the challenges and everything. Yeah, so there was something else I wanted to mention. So that's being careful and aware of the dangers that come with wanting to fix, because that's a medical model approach. Fixing, helping to do things, you know, to increase participation is important, but that shouldn't be the main driver of what you want to do. Okay, so Brian is picking up on that, and let's see. Yeah. Okay, so any other person wants to say anything in just these 2 minutes? Oh, there's something in the chat. Okay, Ali says, just to add to Brian and Suna are really making the same points from different angles. Suna says we are not in the business of fixing learners. Yeah, just supporting them. Brian shows us why that matters. Exactly. If a teacher misses that and reads it as resistance, they slip straight into the fixing mindset. Exactly. Suna warns against this. Suna gives us the principles of engagement, immersion, direct experience. Brian gives us the relational foundation. Underneath them, a child has to feel heard before any of the teaching can actually. That's it. That's actually it. That's the connection. And the layers. You see, all those layers are important, but how you bring them together matters. Because if you bring them in a disorderly way, so like for instance, just like you said, if you go into the fix as your first response, the teacher feels frustrated and it just starts feeling that, oh, this child does not want to learn. Well, especially when you now start saying, other learners are learning how to use Braille and they are succeeding. Orientation and mobility, they're able to go through the buildings without. Why is this 11-year-old? You now start, you know, your ability to want to help increase participation starts becoming a barrier. Yeah. So it's about knowing where those layers come in, and also how to, which one comes first, which Brian was talking about, like you said, which is listen, feel, and then think. Yeah. All right. Thanks very much, everybody. So let's go on a break so I don't take any more time of this. Let's go on our 30 minutes break. We'll come back at 5, and then we'll go into the 3. We'll play the 3 recordings from Benedict back to back, okay? And then in the end, we'll now draw upon some of the things which he's highlighting, which connects to these first aspects which we've spoken about, okay? So see you at 5 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you.
Unati, when we come back, please, we'll start off with what anything you want to share. Just cut.
No, the conversation is going well.
Okay.
But let's start with the videos, perhaps.
All right.
Yeah.
Then you will come. Okay, thanks. All right, we will see you at 5.
Sure.